Hello, I'm John McAllister with the John McAllister Sports Report. Try to cover all areas at different times. And today I'm going to go into Coach's Corner and talk with the head football coach at Cincinnati St. Xavier High School, Steve Specht. Steve, I think, became the head coach in maybe 2003, 2003, 2004, someplace in there. But he's very successful. He's won 4 state titles, big school, and he's run an excellent program, producing Division I players every year. I would say Coach Specht's St. X teams are every year in the top 10, top 15 in the state. Today, Steve's going to talk a little bit about St. Xavier, but he's also going to talk about some of his philosophies on coaching, on building a program, on St. Xavier, and just how he feels about coaching. I think it's important to learn those things about head coaches, and Steve Specht is a good one. Appreciate it, and please sit back and listen to my podcast with Steve Specht, head football coach at St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati. My guest today is the head football coach at Cincinnati St. Xavier High School. I've known him for a long time, and good friend, I think, Steve Specht.
Hey, John.
How are you, Coach?
It's great to be with you. The legend, John McAllister. We go way back, don't we?
We go way back. I think early I was like everybody else. You didn't quite know about recruiting and all this stuff that I did, so you were a little cautious. But I will tell you this, I was in one of your football games down at X. It was an afternoon game, and I was standing there watching your kids warm up, and you came over 10 yards away and started just talking to me a little bit. Walked away. This guy walks up to me. I have no idea who he was. He goes, "Who are you?" He asked me a question. He said, "Who are you?" I said, "John McAllister, blah, blah." And he goes, "Man, he doesn't talk to anybody like that before a game." So I felt I must have arrived, Coach.
Oh, you arrived long before that, John.
Anyway, it's great to talk to you. I got have a lot of different things to talk to you about. First of all, tell me about St. Xavier football in general. What makes it compete every year? What makes it 4 state championships, I think, in big school, if I'm up to date on that? What makes that program like that?
Well, it matters. I think the most important thing in any program, it has to matter to everybody involved. It has to matter to the community. And if you've ever been to Cincinnati, the Cincinnati area, which you have been, football matters down here, whether it's grade school, high school, college, professional, it matters. It matters to the community. It matters to the school. It matters to our president. It matters. And any time you have people aligned with a vision on something that matters, you have a chance to be really successful. And I think that's been the case for St. Xavier High School, at least since I was a student here back in the early 80s. And I got to play for one of the legends in Steve Rasso, who was a coach here for 26 years, my mentor. And before Steve, Tom Balaban was head coach for 25 years. And I've been at the helm now for 21 years. So we're looking at 3/4 of a century with 3 football coaches. And that doesn't happen much anymore, John. I think you know that. And getting back, why? Because it matters.
Right. It's so true. And plus your competition down there every year. You have Elder, you have Moeller, you have Lakota West now. Who you guys? Did you play you're going to play each other 3 times. I think I was looking at some stuff. Lakota West 3 times in a year, I think, almost, because you had them a regular season, a playoff, and you open up with them next year, don't you, or something like that? Holy cow! And you know, Tom's coach is a pretty good coach, and I know you guys are good friends. I'm gonna tell me about you, Steve. We talked earlier about you've been in it 21 years of and all these things. What drives you? What drives you to coach football at St. X?
Well, I always enjoy working with seeing how the kids develop, working with the kids, and I really enjoy the off season a little more so than in season. The in season, just the stress level. It's a Monday through Sunday job. You're putting in 100 hours a week, but the off season gives you a chance to really develop the relationship with the kids, really work on leadership development, team culture building, because it's different every year. It's waking up every morning and going to work with young people. I think it keeps you young in a lot of ways.
Tell me then, real quickly, you mentioned team culture. There are a lot of buzzwords for it now, and I think it's huge. And team culture, school culture, football culture. What you mentioned team culture. What's that about with you?
Well, I know that if you talk to any coach, they're going to talk about their culture, and we have a program culture. We have standards. We have our core values that lead to the standards, and we could go through a 45-minute class on culture building, but it really doesn't matter what the program culture is year to year, because the personalities and the faces change. Those kids are going to have to abide by the program culture if they want to play. But the reality is every team will develop their own culture based on what their intolerables are. What do they want to accomplish? What do they want to build? And they have to police their own team culture is really what it comes down to. Because I could throw out all the cliches. Any coach could do that 24/7, and the kids could all nod and say, oh, yeah, we agree. But how do we really police that culture day to day to day? Well, the kids have to police it, in my opinion. The kids have to own it. And you can't just force feed kids today. They want to know why. So, okay, let's build a team culture. You guys are in charge of it. And all I do is I lead. I'm a servant leader in this process. They ultimately end up building what their intolerables are, and then they police it. And some kids do it well. Some teams do it better than others because, there have been years when we've had more talent and haven't been as successful on the field. And there's been years we've had less talent and have won state championships. And I think it all comes back to what those kids want to accomplish and whether or not they're willing to police what they want to accomplish.
Right. So no matter what level you are, I think that's true. I mean, if you're D1 or D7 or whatever, you think culture at Marion Local High School is pretty good too, as well. I mean, they just are good kids, and then they work hard and everything. So true. Okay, let's talk about a couple other things. What aspects of coaching football really gets you fired up? You kind of alluded to it with out of season, and maybe you've already talked about it, but what really, you've been at it quite a while. What really gets you fired up?
Well, like I said before, I really enjoy the culture building aspect of it, the leadership component, it's the relational piece of seeing how these kids grow. And I just had my parent meetings, and I always tell the freshman parents the same thing. Hey, take a picture of your son with his shirt off, flexing somewhere in your house, and take that same picture set up every year for the next 4 years. And you'll be dumbfounded at the development of your son should he decide to stay in the program for 4 years. So that's a physical development piece, right? We have there's a big sign in our locker room. You walk by it and it says, all men were once boys, but not all boys become men. And that's the piece of the puzzle that I've always found intriguing is that developmental piece, and how are we teaching, what are we giving these kids that are going to help them be successful 20, 30, and 40 years from now, not just during this football season. I've got a really great staff that does the X's and O's, and they're really good at that. I'm really intrigued, enamored by the whole process, and how do we develop these young boys into successful men. And that's, I guess that's the easiest way for me to say, that's what I really enjoy doing, is focusing on that piece of the puzzle. And at this stage of my career,
Right.
If we talked about this 25 years ago, I'm chomping at the bit to put in a new pattern blitz and do all kind of exotic coverages behind. But I'll leave that to the young guys.
You've been there, done that, right?
Exactly.
Sure. Okay. What makes an excellent high school football player?
Well, number one, they have to have the God-given talent. If you really want to talk about they have to be gifted, right? It's so funny now. People ask, "Well, what position do you coach?" I says, "Well, it depends on who my best player is." So, no, you win when you have better players. The whole Jimmy and Joe's cliche. But number one, they have to have gifts. They have to work at it. They have to care about it, and they have to love it. If you want to be a great football player, you have to love football. If you want to be a good football player, you have to really love your teammates. You have to love the experience. There's a big difference between loving the experience and loving football. Is the way I like to phrase it. Yeah, and it's a whole. Most of these kids don't love football. They love the experience of playing high school football at St. Xavier High School, or high school football you put in the high school. They love the locker room banter. They love, even though they say they hate getting up at 5 a.m. to go to our 6 a.m. workouts, they look back on it and they remember the times. They remember, running out on the field for a playoff game or a big GCL. They remember the moments. They don't remember much about football because only 11 of them are going to play, John. You've got 110 varsity players on your roster and only 11 are going to play. There's a reason these kids keep coming back, and it's because they love the experience. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be great football players.
It's we're going to talk about our friend Chuck Kyle in a minute, but Chuck Kyle told me almost the exact same thing 15 years ago, I think, something like that. Because I was at a game and there were kids seniors warming up and stuff. I'm on the field and there's no way they're going to play. I mean, there's no way. And so later, not that obviously during the game or anything, but after that game, I think Sunday night, he and I would talk and I'd say, why do those guys play? Come out. He goes, they want to be a part of the team. Yeah. And he said, even in the wintertime, if he said the kids work out, I'll have parents say, hey, my kid worked out all winter and he's not going to get a shot. And Chuck said to me, he said, no, he worked out all winter to get an opportunity to be on the team. And there's so much truth to that.
Yeah.
Mention Chuck Kyle real briefly. Tell me, I know you're good friends, but tell me about Chuck Kyle and your admiration for him.
Yeah, Chuck's been instrumental in my development as a coach, especially as a young coach. He's been a mentor to me, and I don't think you can find a better human being. I've always referred to Coach as the GOAT, and I believe he's the greatest of all time in this profession in the state of Ohio. His record speaks for itself. But tell you, John, I had an opportunity. Coach called me back in 2008, and USA Football was putting together the first national team, the first Team USA, and he asked me if I'd come and coach for him. And I was like, oh my God, yes. So for a month, we were up in Canton and working with these great players high school players from all over the country. And I'm going to sit back and coach with these guys, Frank Lenti, Mount Carmel High School, and Chris Merritt from down south in Miami, Florida, and Tom Bainter from Bothell, and all these great national coaches that I'm just going to learn from. And I'll tell you, I learned more watching Coach Kyle, and it had nothing to do with X's and O's. It had everything to do with relationship building, how he dealt with people. And it didn't matter if you were the custodian at Walsh College, Walsh University, where we were practicing, or the president of the university, or the players from all the other teams. He would walk the grounds at night to pick up trash if he saw something. And it was like that defined to me, Chuck Kyle's about people. He's about being transformational in the lives of other people. And that's what I took away from that experience. And that was priceless. And that's who he is. Chuck's a better human being than he was football coach. And when you're the greatest of all time and you're an even better person, I think he's punched his ticket to heaven. That's for sure.
That's for sure. Sounds really good. How important is a player's image in today's society? High school player, but really high school, college, how important do you feel, Steve, that his image is, or her image is, really?
Boy, I guess that's a matter of perspective, John. It would depend on who you're asking. For me, I don't think, if you're worried about your image all the time, you're not going to take care of business day to day. That's my opinion. The kids that I see succeed over and over are the kids that could care less about what anybody thinks of them. They except for the people that they love and they care about in their inner circle. Social media today, in my opinion, has driven these kids down a path that I don't think's real healthy. They're on their phone all day long. They're, as I tell the kids, do you think people are going to post negative things about themselves? No, they're going to post all the positive things that are going on. Hey, look at me stuff. Well, every single person that posts all these positive things, they have to deal with adversity just like you guys. Right. There's a lot of pitfalls that they try to deal with, but that doesn't sell their image, if that's what we want to call it. So, unfortunately, I think we live in a society today where people are enamored with image. And I know it's important, but if you're worried about your image all the time, you're never going to take care of the little things. You're never going to impact other people's lives because you're going to be too self-absorbed. Right. And I think that part of our job as educators and coaches is to be transformational in other people's lives, not transactional, but transformational, and to make a difference and teach these kids how to be transformational.
It's really good. I agree, obviously. Okay, let's go to a different area real quick and we'll be done. These things go so fast for me. I mean, I love to listen to coaches and goes on too long. Tell me, first of all, tell me your one Urban Meyer experience when he was coaching you. You were a defensive back, I think, right? Was it his first job that coaching you?
It was so funny. So I was actually in Sarasota. I was down in Florida. I work in development now, and I had an event down there, and I saw Coach. We used to call him UB, Coach UB. He was 21 years old. He was 20 years old. I was 17, 18 at the time. So we've developed a good friendship. I saw him at a golf course. We both were playing golf down there at a place called Gator Creek, and we ended up going to dinner that night. And I got to see him, and we laughed just talking about how long ago that was, and just the fire in that guy, boy. When there's not that much of a separation in age, he could rip you upside down with the best of them at the time. But he did it in a way that was challenging you to become a better version of yourself, not condescending, not putting you down. But Coach Meyer it's been a lot of fun for me to watch his growth as he's gone through it. And it's hard to argue. He's one of the greatest of all times as well. And, it's been fun to watch that.
I won't dispute that. I've known him since he took the book. Well, I worked with him a little bit when he was an assistant at Notre Dame. That's how I can. And I had the football business going. And in fact, he complimented a few times, even recently, which is huge for me. Anyway, tell me, I have just a few more. How has the NIL affected high school players?
Boy, that's a great question. It's really not NIL. Everybody calls it NIL, but if we really had to research it, I think it'd date back to the Johnny Manziel story and all the money that the A&M was making off of his name, image, and likeness. But the reality is, almost, I would love to see percentage, but I got to believe that the vast majority of kids aren't selling, the colleges aren't selling their jerseys or their name or their image. It's pay to play is where we've got, what this has become is it's pay to play, and there are no guardrails. And I'm not complaining about it. It's the world in which we live. You have to adapt to it. But I don't know how healthy it is. Growing up, and we're old school, John, you're a legend at this. It was about an education. I haven't heard a college coach come in and recruit a player and talk about the education. And I'm not talking about Ivy League schools. They still come in and promote the educational in the small schools. But these Power 4 schools, they don't even talk about you're going to graduate with this, you're going to graduate with that. And sadly enough, the transfer portal, I would really question when kids are jumping into the portal, how many of their college credits are going to transfer from school to school to school? And you have to ask yourself, getting back to, you asked me what I love about this profession, it's about developing young boys into men. I don't know that we're helping them. And I'm not opposed to any kid making money. If you make money, go make it. And if it were my son, I'd be encouraging him, hey, if this is life-changing money that you can invest, go do it. But again, if we're looking 30, 40 years from now, a kid that's making $800,000 to play football, well, when that dries up and he doesn't make it into the NFL, is he expecting to go work for somebody that's going to pay him $800,000? You're not prepared for that.
I totally agree, Steve, and that's two of my biggest concerns. And the other one is, he going to drive that car after his eligibility runs out, doesn't make it in the NFL? Is he going to drive that really nice car? Is he going to live in that really nice apartment? That's concerning to me. And then with all the transferring, he's not going to have credits enough to graduate. I worry about it. The NIL, I think it's great. If my son, everybody at Ohio State was wearing a jersey with his name on it, I'd be great, because give me some money for it. But you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
To wear my son's jersey, there's got to be NIL there, but not what you're talking about. It's just crazy. It bothers me. One more question on that. When's that going to hit high schools in Ohio?
That's another great question, John. I don't know. I don't know. It's always seemed like a 10-year trickle-down effect.
Yeah.
That something would happen in the NFL. 10 years later, you see the colleges adopting it, and then 10 years after that, you see the high schools. I really don't know. I wouldn't know how to navigate that world, because now what are we going to be paying 14-year-old kids to come to our school? Or I don't know. I don't know. We're gonna have to see how it plays out. And like I said before, I'm all about adapting and changing with the times.
You have to.
You don't have to like it. And I'm not a fan, and I just wish there were some guardrails on it. It's the Wild West right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how the next few years play themselves out.
Two more questions. Your advice to young coaches coming out of college. What would you tell them? They're talking to you and they say, Coach Specht, what's my next movement? What's my next move? How do I get interviews and things like that? What do you tell a young guy that's talking to you, not necessarily at St. X, but any school. How does he, what's his steps to, he's graduated from high school or college. Now he wants to be a high school coach. What do you tell him?
Well, there's so many layers to that, John. I guess networking.
A couple important ones.
Well, I think networking and developing relationships with good people. You talk about, you go back to when we met that one day and I went over and talked to you for a while. That's networking. John McAllister you're one of the legends in the game. You want to establish these relationships both in high school and collegiately. I know when I was young, I used to write letters to people I thought were great, that seemed like great leaders. And I wanted to learn more about leadership. So I would send out 10, 15 letters a year. I'd get lucky to hear back from one of them. And if I heard back, I would schedule a meeting and I'd go out and meet. And it didn't matter if it was a college coach, a high school coach, a businessman. I think you have to learn how to network and absorb and be a sponge and realize. When I was hired at St. X in 2003, I was ready. I knew everything and I was ready to go. And then the day they hired me, I realized I knew nothing. Nothing. And you draw from great people, the Chuck Kyles of the world, the Steve Rassers of the world, the John McAllisters of the world. You have to be able to network and realize you don't know much, but by surrounding yourself with a lot of great people, you learn along the way.
I tell young coaches, and I did this, by the way, I said, when you go to clinics, and I said, or spring practice or anything, just meet the coach and have a couple questions to ask him. And you walk away first. Don't stand there. And I still do that. I let you go. I think it's so huge to network like that. In fact, and he's at Penn State, head football coach at Penn State. I see him at Miami at a summer camp. Talked to him for a couple of minutes on recruiting Ohio kids, just a couple of minutes. Saw him the next year, I think at Kent State or someplace. And I said, "You probably don't remember me." He goes, "Yeah, I do. Down in Miami last year." And so from then on, I thought that was really good. But don't push them.
Well, I think it's an interesting question. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, generation to generation, you're going to have different names and different faces.
Right.
Here's what's changed, John, is society has changed.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a much faster society. I mean, when I were younger and you were younger, and I was an English major, so I did a lot of reading and I wrote a lot of research papers. Well, when we would go to the library, it was actually, you'd have to go to the card catalog and you'd have to find the book, and then you'd have to go find the book and pull it out the microfiche, right? And that was the world that we grew up in. In today's, my God, I can type in one thing and have 5,000 results immediately. Well, I mean, that is so fast that you have to adapt and change to that world. So what you're seeing is a lot of young coaches that have access to so much more than the older coaches had access to. And they're so far ahead of the game from a technology standpoint. It's really mind-numbing in a lot of ways. The X's and O's haven't changed. I think the way the young coaches comport themselves is no different from what I do everybody's excited about devising how to run triple option or how to defend it and all that. None of that's changed. It's the access to information, AI, technology. It has changed this world so dramatically. And that's not a good or a bad thing. It's just the way it is today.
And like you said, Coach, you have to adapt. You have to do something or you'll get out of the business, I think. Yeah. Coach, I really enjoy talking to you. And you in your own way have stroked me over the years, and it makes it, it's good. And I have a lot of respect for you as well. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. A lot of philosophy, a lot of information.
Well, it's always a pleasure. As I said, you're one of the legends, John. Hopefully you get some of those young coaches on here and ask those coaches about dinosaurs like me and Chuck Kyle.
Chuck's been on. I got to get him on again. But still have the wisdom, and you still carry a lot of clout. Thanks again, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Have a